Hello everyone, today I bring you the LEGO Star Wars Advent Calendar. Now this is set 75307 with 335 pieces. Now you get 24 LEGO surprises, but the added bonus is that you get this little bow here, so you can wrap it up nicely, you can present it that way, or you can just open up the regular way and you kind of have a nice bit of just present there. But what I'm actually referring to is if you flip it around to the side where it's more open, you can get yourself this nice little play mat that is going to be great if you want to have a bit of fun while you're experiencing this advent calendar build. So there is a bit of play value in the box, which is not seen on basically any other LEGO set, so that these advent calendars are special in that category. But unlike regular reviews of this sort of advent calendars, I'm not going to be going through each and everything that is included just as is. I'm actually going to be rating and going through a few categories. I'm going to go through the minifigures and which one I think is best from worst, and then also doing that for the sets. Now I'd like to stress this before I start. I don't think any of these minifigures, there's 6 of them, I don't think there's any of them that are necessarily bad, but I think the one that's definitely the worst on the list is probably going to be the Tuscan Raider. Now, don't get me wrong, the Tuscan Raider is great. He's got a great head mold. He's also got a bit of, rogue-esque kind of, cloth clothing around him, which is very highly detailed. He's also got those little, packs on the front of him. He's also got that belt which kind of wraps around him. He's a very nice figure, but I think out of all the figures that are presented in this box, he's kind of the worst out of the 6. Next, I'm going to have to put the Stormtrooper. Now, Stormtroopers are great, however, I do think that the helmet mold, because you can't really rotate the helmet, kind of is a defactor to the playability of the figure. Now, I think it's still great because you do get those darkened eyes, and you also do have great armor and kind of detailing on the chest and on the legs. Now, on the back, if you do rotate him, you do have that back armor plating, which is also very lovely, but I think that overall the helmet kind of ruins the figure. Now, you do get this bit of a childish face, so you do actually get more of a regular face. It's not angry to say, which is quite nice because it gives a more of character to the figure, which I think is nice, but I think ultimately he does deserve the number 5 spot because there are better figures in this pack, but it is still a great thing to get included in such a set. I think the 4th best inclusion of this set is going to be the IG-88 minifigure. Now, I think as a droid, it is a good figure. You've got that printed cylinder over there to make up all of the various eyes that he does have, and you even do have a clip on the back for his rifle that he may be carrying, and I think that's a great playability. You don't have to put the weapon away anywhere or keep it in his hand if you do want to put him in some sort of vehicle. I think it's a great inclusion to have that, and I think the figure itself is very nice, but at the end of the day, it is a droid, so they don't have much detail, and also, if you think about it, they are a bit more fragile than other figures. So I think with that bearing in mind, I think I have to put it at 4th, and the other 3 figures are much better than this one. At number 3 on the list, I'm going to be putting Scarfed Mando, which I think is a great figure, because instead of his cape, you get a scarf. And I think that's great. For one, you don't have to use a Mando with a cape. Now, you can always just take off the cape, but I think having that scarf gives him a much more cheery appeal. And depending on who you are, you may very much like that. This is one of the 2 Christmas or festive-related, holiday-themed reskins of a LEGO minifigure, depending on how you look at it. Now, I think this is very nice. He does have the standard Beskar armor for Mando, where he's got the leg pads, the chest pad, the side arm pads, his gauntlets, helmet, of course, and then also the back panel. And the nice thing is that the scarf goes all the way around, and it does have a bit that pokes out onto the side, and I think that makes for a wonderful minifigure. Now, I don't think it's that crazy different from the regular Mando, but I think it's nice, festive-looking figure that you can definitely appreciate in your collection. Now, in second, I probably have the best minifigure that probably is in the set, which is the Scout Trooper. Now, the redesigned Scout Trooper is just absolutely amazing, and if you don't have one, it's really a fantastic pickup, where you can get this in the Razor Crest or this, so $130 or $40. That is quite a drastic difference. However, if you are looking to pick it up solely, any of those two sets solely for this figure, I would suggest waiting for next year to roll around, since it will be in a $20 set, which will be a much more affordable and better way to acquiring said figure. But I think for what this guy is, he's very great. He does have himself a nice little face there. He looks a bit more grumpy than the Stormtrooper, and Mando just has a standard, like, fully black face, so I didn't think that would be that important to bring up. It's just the all-around dark head, because they still haven't switched over to a face or anything like that. But he has great armor detail, great armor back detail. He's got himself a little bit of backpack through this indent right here, and then his helmet just looks phenomenal. He's just a grayed out figure. But I think the best drive in this set is definitely going to be the #1 figure. The figure I'm referring to is the Holiday Grogu or Baby Yoda, depending on how you look at it. Both are, in a sense, accepted these days, although one of them is obviously not correct, but, you know, take it as you will. He's got this nice red little sweater jumper with a bit of detailing. He does have a nice scarf, which is very nice. The back of it is all red, and the face is just the same as always, but I think this is just a wonderful minifigure. Not too much to say about it. It's just extremely cute, as many people would say. But, you know, that basically wraps up the minifigures. I know that I've taken a drastically long time covering those, but I'll try to speed things up with the sets. The worst build that's definitely in this advent calendar is definitely going to be these two targets. Although they do have some playability with the stud shooters that are included, they are just kind of useless builds. Next is going to be this sand pile. Now, you do get your weapon for the Tuscan Raider in this part, but honestly, it's just kind of a pointless weapon stack build, which honestly, sometimes they can be great because they provide a bit of extra weapons in the set. But honestly, you don't really need this here. It's kind of just another pointless build. Next is the bit of a Tuscan Raider kind of like large crossbow, which looks really bulky in my opinion. It functions because you can have the Tuscan Raider use it. But if you really want the Tuscan catapult, or not catapult, crossbow, you should really pick up the $30 set, which has a much better version of it, because this just doesn't look right in my opinion. Next up, I'm going to have to put the little droid skiff boat, or boat that runs on the lava river. Now, you do get the droid in here, and you also get some spots for your minifigures. Although it's not going to be to scale, you could definitely have some minifigures in there, although it is definitely going to trip it over if you're not careful. I think it's a great little bit of an inclusion, but it just doesn't sit right with me. I don't think it's the best thing. It is alright, it's better than some of the other inclusions, but I think it definitely could have been replaced with something much better. Next, I have the Scout Trooper and Mando weapon holder. It is a bit nice looking because it does have that bit of red, but still, it's a weapon holder. You do get some weapons with it, but it's could have been replaced with something better, something more like a vehicle, because some of the vehicles in this are very nice. Some of them are a bit less, but weapon holder, it's a weapon holder. Next, we have this more wall-style weapon holder, which I think looks a bit better, because you can kind of have a bit of wall cover for, like, if you're having, like, a battle scene between some of your characters. If they have weapons, you kind of have a bit of scenery to kind of play with, whereas this one, you don't really get that. It's just kind of a weapon holder, so I think that's why I rank this one higher up. Although it's still just a weapon holder, and it's kind of a filler item, if you will. So it's not really that great getting it on like a particular day if you're opening these day by day, because that is a function of this. But if you're opening them all at once, it's kind of less heavy of a bad thing, I guess. Next, I have the Scout Trooper speeder bike. I think, although it is a nice thing to have a speeder bike, especially since you have something for the Scout Trooper, I don't really like the design. I have some of the other designs, like the Battle Pack version, if I can get that, which I understand that it can't be as good as this one because it's a lot less pieces, or if you even take into account the AT-AT version of the speeder bike, which also uses a bunch more pieces and looks even better. It does look worse, and I've kind of been spoiled by both of these designs to the point where I don't really appreciate this small design as much, but I think if you're a kid who just kind of needs a speeder bike, I think this is a good enough model where it does the job well enough that you shouldn't be too disappointed by it. You also can attach the little bit of a holder for Grogu or Baby Yoda, so you can recreate the scene where Grogu or Baby Yoda gets captured, which is quite nice. Although he does have the festive attire, you can definitely still have just as much fun with that. Next up is going to be the Imperial Armored Marauder. Now, like a few of these sets, this actually does have a counterpart for $40, and I probably should have mentioned that for a few other sets, but I think this is a pretty good build. It's not one of my favorites, but like as a thing that's included in this, I think it's not wasted. I think it could have been better, but I think it's good enough to the point where it's a passable build. Next up is something that you might classify as a minifigure. However, I've decided to put it in the more builds category because it is more of a build. This is going to be the Imperial Interrogation Droid. Now, I know that that might sound a bit frightening to some people because it is all about interrogation, and he's definitely just holding up a syringe, which is a bit frightful, but I think it is a nice inclusion. It isn't. I had it a bit higher on my list originally, but I think looking at some of the other builds that we have coming up, I think it's a bit worse. But I think it's a nice inclusion. It's kind of like your quote-unquote 7th minifigure, which I think is a nice inclusion. It's not a bad inclusion. It's not the best inclusion, but I think it's good enough where you can be happy getting this in an advent calendar. Next up is the TIE Fighter, which I think is a very nice build for the small space or advent calendar type build that they needed to make. I think it does the job of representing a TIE Fighter really nicely, and although it is a bit smaller when you compare it to the X-Wing, which is quite honestly one of the biggest builds in this, apart from the speeder bike on scale, and the Razor Crest, which is piece-wise I think the most piece-intensive build comparable to some of these. Now, some of these do use a lot of pieces, but I think piece usage to how good it looks, I think the Razor Crest definitely beats out the X-Wing now. But I think this is still a very nice little TIE Fighter that you do get included in the set. The counterpart to the TIE Fighters coming right up. We got the X-Wing with the little R2-D2 represented as the little dot. I think that's a nice little touch there. You do have the ability to fold out the wings slightly, which I think is a great way to activate those S-foils and have a wide range, so it's not going to be too difficult to get it into proper movement. Now, putting them in is a bit more challenging to get it into that landed phase, but it is easier when you want to extend the X-foils, which I think is a great feature, and it also looks pretty nice. So I think all in all, the X-Wing is a great inclusion for this advent calendar. Next up is going to be the child's little bit of a cradle. Over here, I think it's a great build. You know, you can move it around because it is a little bit on these tiled off pieces, and I think it looks great. I think it encloses the space nicely, and I think that the build is very nice, even though it isn't red. I think the red really adds to the red aesthetics of the child with the green, and that does really give off those red and green Christmas colors, which I think is very nice. And also, this gives hope for the future that we could get an all light gray version for like other sets, that we do have multiple versions of this cradle so that we can have it in other sets. And I think it's very nice to get this for the first time, because prior to this you would have to have your own custom cradle, and I think getting this, especially since you already do get the child in the set, is just fantastic. Next up is the E-Web Blaster, which is going to be very useful for your Stormtrooper. Now, this is a high repeating blaster, so it's going to be firing laser bolts at a pretty fast pace, but you also do get a bit of a stud shooter at the top, so like the thing which just fires out. Now, to some people this may seem like an eye hazard. It doesn't really do that much unless you're like physically aiming at someone's eye, which I don't think you're really going to be doing this. So I think it's a great little thing, and I think it looks pretty nice even though it does have a stud shooter on the top. Next up is going to be the Imperial Light Cruiser, which I think looks fairly good, even though the build is a bit weak in some components. It does look very nice and very accurate, even to the canonical version and also the Lego version for $160, which is a nice set. I don't have that set yet, but I think that they look fairly similar, down to like maybe a few things off with the proportions. But I think still, regardless, this is a nice inclusion that can definitely go against up a few of the other sets, that the other builds. Like, you can have it go up against the X-Wing or the Razor Crest, which I'll get to in a little bit. Next up is this nice little blue speeder, and surprisingly, I didn't think much of this when I first saw it, but I think this has really grown on me. I think the color is very nice. You don't really get this blue color in many Lego Star Wars sets, and I think just having it in this mini speeder, although small, is really appealing to the eye, and I think it really kind of brings out one of those better builds that are included in the set. So I think, although it is pretty small, although it is actually quite large compared to some of the other builds, I think it's a very nice inclusion. I think it's one of the things that really surprised me when looking at all these things together. Watching the home stretch, the final two before the best set is going to have to be the little opponent bounty hunter little starfighter here, which I think is nice, especially with that yellow front. It looks very nice, to say the least, because it does have these. I wasn't too sure on this one at first, but I think looking at it for quite a bit has really made me open up to it. And I think it is a very nice inclusion that kind of resonates a bigger base of space, which I think is very nice, especially since an advent calendar builds are normally very small. I feel like this one being a bit bigger is really helpful in kind of giving a bit of more kind of danger, in a sense, that your good guys and bad guys can kind of have a bigger clash if you do decide to kind of play around with these sets. And then also I decided to put the Boba Fett Slave One or Starship, depending on how much you want to censor the words, is also very nice. Now, I know that it does look a bit weird from the back, but I think overall it's a very nice build that definitely does look like the Slave One, and I think it's a very nice little build. It might be a bit complex and a bit weaker in some portions, but I think all in all it looks very good. Now, if we go on to the final thing, it is going to be, of course, the Razor Crest. Now, last time, I know that they did a Razor Crest in the last advent calendar, but they really stepped it up with this one. You get so much more detail and so much more proportion that I think it just blows the other one out of the water. I think that this is really a prime example of what a good advent calendar build looks like, and I'm really glad that they did include something like this in this advent calendar, because it kind of wraps everything nicely. Although everything in this is Mandalorian related, I think that having the Razor Crest as the best thing in this is very, very good. Now, if you compare it to the big one, which I will... Now, it's not even going to fit in frame. But, like, it looks surprisingly close. Like, other than a few color shifts and, like, differences, it really looks very accurate to the larger thing, and I think that that is a great thing that they managed to capture with this. And all in all, I would say that this is one of the better advent calendars they have released. Maybe one of the exclusives is really good, and the other is a bit less good, and some of the side minifigs, other than these three, are a bit lacking. But I think if you are a person that is thinking about picking this setup for someone that you know or for yourself, I think that it is a good pickup. Even though I myself am a bit opposed to advent calendars, I do support the purchase of this one because I think it is fairly good, even though if these little pieces do not seem to add up to the value that is the $40, I can understand that opinion. I, for one, actually do share that opinion for quite a bit of time, and I think that if you're a person who likes advent calendars, good for you. If you're a person who doesn't like advent advent calendars, good for you as well. That is your opinion. You're entitled to it. But with that out of the way, I hope you enjoyed, and see you next time. If you decide to continue watching some of my other videos, I promise they're not as long and extensive as this one was.